Hello, and welcome back to the Misty Morrison Podcast. I'm your host, Misty Morrison, and this is episode 59 of Petty Please. Did I get my numbers right? Yep. Episode 59 of Petty Please. Here on the Misty Morrison Podcast, we love to listen or read. We love all the stories of pettiness, revenge, malicious compliance, bad bosses, bad neighbors, entitlement, all the things. And we like to read them and be grateful that is not our story. Before we get into our stories for the day, our usual housekeeping, whether you are new or returning, please remember to engage with the content online to help the channel grow. Every bit of engagement can help, and I'm trying to build a dream. If you are listening on podcast, please leave a 5-star review if you liked it. On YouTube or anywhere else, give it a like, a heart, a thumbs up. Subscribe for more. Hit the bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. Comment with your thoughts on the stories down below and share it with a friend. Long-form content goes live every Tuesday and Thursday on podcast and YouTube. Short-form content goes live 3 times daily on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. Okay, into our stories for the day. Story number 1 is coming to us from r/malicious compliance. Booking travel. I worked for a small company where employees could plan and book their own travel, but there were some guidelines. One of them was always select the least expensive option for flights. Do not book based on convenience. After a particular trip, I picked a flight that was an additional $50 so I get home earlier on a Friday. Problem was I was traveling with a coworker who followed the rules, and when we submitted our expenses, I was asked why I took an earlier and more expensive flight, instead of spending 3 hours at the airport after our last meeting. I was given a warning. Well, my boss and I had to go to a conference in London. Since we were flying from the US, we decided to piggyback on some client meetings. We left our home airport, spent 2 nights in Amsterdam, then 5 days in London. My boss would never book his own travel, so I had to do it for him. On the way home, there was a direct flight to our home airport, but it was an extra $250. So I booked a flight that put us through JFK, and instead of landing home around 1 p.m., we landed at 5 p.m. Enter my malicious compliance. I booked a less expensive trip, and we had a 4-hour layover on a Friday afternoon. My boss was pissed because he had an hour drive from our airport, so he had to cancel a date night with his wife. He asked why I booked this flight instead of something that got us in earlier, and I explained the policy. Monday morning, we had a chat with HR about using best judgment when it comes to booking. Oh, the kicker was that because of my status with the airline, I got an upgrade on both flights and was able to stretch out. Boss, not so much. I love it because it was all fine and good until the boss traveled and the boss was inconvenienced. Because yours, $50 for 3 hours, was really a fair trade. Yeah, and especially because I'm thinking about business travel. Typically, you are paid for all of your working hours. And if you are traveling for your work, your travel time is included. So especially with your 3-hour flight, it might have been cheaper for you to spend the $50 on the earlier flight than for them to pay you 3 more hours. Almost certainly the case with you and your boss is an extra 4 hours for 2 people. So they had to pay an extra 8 hours total worth of wages to save this $250 on the shorter flight. They didn't think that one through. But I'm glad you maliciously complied, the boss noticed, and it finally got taken care of. But I do think that write-up should disappear from your file. Good for you. I probably would have been petty and done the same thing. Story number 2 is coming to us from r/malicious compliance. Can't eat food after brushing. Yes, that is a very strict rule. It's not an office compliance story, just my 3-year-old kid. We have a rule that after brushing teeth at night, you can't eat food. I and Kid had done brushing, but my partner was not finished with dinner. When Kid saw her, she attempted to eat. She told her mom, "Dad says I can't eat now, but if you could please force me to eat, I won't oppose either." Edit the actual combo. Kid staring at dinner plate. Wife, want to eat? Kid, Papa say no. And okay, so they're from they speak another language, so it's a word for doing something forcefully, they explained, but it's not English. And OP had replied to a comment and said, it's obvious that English is not our first language, it needs a bit of effort to convey the same message. Makes sense. If you can force me to eat, I won't oppose. I love that this kid is thinking things through. I also very, very strictly have that rule every now and then, because who wants to hear their kid? You're trying to get your kid off to bed and they're like, I'm hungry. So sometimes I'll say, okay, you can eat something else, but you're going to go brush your teeth and floss and do your mouthwash all over again. And he will happily agree to that. I don't always give in to that. But yeah, once the teeth are clean, they need to stay clean without any food dropped in there overnight, because dental hygiene. Story number 3 is coming to us from r/malicious compliance. Socks go on feet. Longtime reader, first-time poster. Lots of stories here stem from dissatisfaction, so I thought I might share something a little lighter to brighten the story pool. For context, you need to know one thing about my wife. She has certain joint issues, hips mainly, nothing big, but it tends to make any activity that involves bending a nuisance. One such activity is putting on socks. She can do it herself, but it's sometimes just easier if I do it for her. I don't mind this at all. So the story happened one morning when she's getting ready for work and I'm still in bed. I worked a later shift. She approaches my side of the bed with a pair of socks and bare feet. No words are needed. I sit up and proceed to put on the first sock. I like to do things properly, so working from an opposite angle, you can't quite put on socks precisely as you do on your own feet. So I twist and pull the sock until I get the toe and heel parts in place. As I do the tweaking, she says, they don't have to be perfect, they just have to be on the foot. I didn't say anything, but my inner devilishly grinning self thought, alrighty then. I take the second sock and snap it onto her foot about 2 inches past the toes. It's holding firmly enough, so it can't be shaken off. Technically, it was on the foot. Her jaw dropped for a second, then turned into an okay, you got me smile, followed by an I can't believe you did that sentence. I proceeded to put the sock on properly. We shared a kiss and she was off to work, while I went back for a bit more shut-eye. Oh, I love that one. That's so sweet. I can tell how playful you guys are together just from that one story, and I love it. Okay, story number, and the first comment on that one before I scrolled away from it said, that was weirdly wholesome, and it really was. Oh gosh. Story number 4 is coming to us from r/petty revenge. Got instant petty revenge on someone who was harassing animals. I'm in university right now and was just walking to class today when I saw some idiot kid following a family of geese around. The baby geese were running away and the parent geese were hissing and positioning themselves between the babies and the kid. Clearly because they were scared. I'm not confrontational, but I love animals more than most people, so I felt like I had to say something. Although geese can take care of themselves, let's be real. I told him to knock it off, and he said, "What? I'm just following them," in the stupidest voice you can imagine. I said, okay, called him an idiot, and told him he'd be attacked by a goose. I walked off and went up to my building where everyone has to scan their student ID to get in. As I was scanning my ID, I saw him in the door reflection. He was running behind me, unfortunately, free of a goose attack, presumably to try to catch up so he could enter the building without scanning an ID like many people do. As soon as I was inside, I turned around and pulled the door shut behind me and watched him stop running and groan, as I clearly ruined his plan to use me to get into the building. I just don't understand why he wouldn't think me, the person who just called him an idiot to his face, would be the one he could piggyback off to get into the building. It was petty, but good. So satisfying in the moment. It was so simple. So easy. The first comment said, do not screw with the Canadian attack dogs. They will screw you up. Someone else commented, the official name for them is cobra chickens. The next comment said, cobras don't murder. They are officially called Canadian murder chickens. And the next comment said, you say tomato, I say tomato, but technically they would be Canada murder chickens because the true name for them is Canada goose, not Canadian. They are only Canadian if they were born in Canada. You need to check for a little red maple leaf under their left wing. And the next comment said, however, checking for the little red maple leaf will be signing your own death sentence. Oh gosh, that was fun. Yeah, so my petty story for... Okay, so related to, kind of, roundabout way. So I was driving to another town to run an errand one day, and I was in front, and another vehicle was tailgating me down the road. And I swerved to miss a turtle, like to not hit it with my tires. I straddled over the turtle. Well, I could see them in my rear view, and they swerved deliberately to run over the turtle. They killed it. And I was so unreasonably mad. I was like, I just spared it, and you're just right there for no reason. It's even bad for your tires if you run over a turtle. So I was mad, and the only way that I could possibly get revenge was to drive unreasonably slow. So I drove unreasonably slow for, it might have been a mile for the rest of the way before I had to turn off. But I'd go slow, and he stayed right on my bumper the whole time. And every time he tried to go around me, past me, there's another car coming. There's another car coming. Finally, when he had a good, clear opening to pass me, it was when I needed to make my turn. I turned my signal on. I slowed way down. I almost came to a complete stop before I made that turn that day. And he floored it, honked the horn. I'm like, that's the least of what you deserved. Don't mess with the animals. All right, story number 5 is coming to us from r/pettyrevenge. My coworker kept taking credit for closing tasks, so I stopped reminding him about the one thing that made him look useful. I used to work night shift at a small hotel front desk. There were only 2 of us, so it was pretty obvious who actually did the work and who just floated around looking busy. My coworker Eric was great at the second one. He'd avoid the boring stuff like wiping down the coffee station, restocking key cards, and getting breakfast set up ready, then act like we had both done equal work. When the morning manager came in, he always made himself sound way more on top of things than he really was. The part that finally got to me was breakfast prep. Night shift was supposed to leave things ready for the morning attendant, including moving the waffle batter from the freezer so it would be usable. Technically, that was shared, but the only reason it ever got done was because I reminded Eric every shift around 5:10. I did it because if it got missed, morning shift complained at both of us. The one morning, Eric told our manager that I was forgetful about closing details, but that he always caught things behind me. After that, I stopped reminding him. I still did my own work, I just stopped giving him the nudge that let him act competent. 3 shifts later, the breakfast attendant opened the freezer and realized the waffle batter had never been moved. Manager asked what happened, and Eric immediately tried to say he thought I handled that part. My manager just looked at him and said, I thought you said you always double-checked behind her. Room got quiet real fast. He didn't get fired or anything, but after that, he stopped acting like my supervisor in a name tag and somehow started remembering breakfast prep all by himself and helping me much more. Fantastic plan. Because if someone isn't doing the work and they're just taking the credit and you stop helping them, it's always going to be obvious. And you didn't have to do anything. You literally had to do nothing for him to get himself in trouble. And it wasn't even serious trouble, but it worked. Very effective. I like that. Story number 6 is coming to us from r/pettyrevenge. You don't need the aircon on. It's not that hot. I used to work in a hardware shop here in the UK. We had a heat wave one weekend when I was working. The shop floor was roasting, but despite calling upstairs, the manager wouldn't turn on the aircon from his office, telling us to stop complaining, but he wouldn't come down to the floor. Eventually, I went up to see him after several complaints from customers about how warm it was. I found him sat in his comfy chair with a fan on his desk while he messed about with spreadsheets. The moment he went on his lunch a few hours later, my supervisor and I shot upstairs and grabbed the fan, went down to the stockroom, and stamped on that fan until it was in pieces. Okay. Then we dumped the evidence in a bin bag in a public bin outside the back of the shop. The stupid old bastard spent the rest of the day lamenting the loss of his fan, searching around thinking we'd hid it, and when he eventually joined us on the shop floor for the final hour of the workday, decided we indeed needed the aircon switched on. Every morning after this, we ensured our large industrial bin was dumped in his parking spot, so that he'd have to get out of his car to move it before parking. Every single morning for years. That's commitment. That is a lot of commitment right there. I don't like the destruction of property. You probably should have just hit it. But doesn't sound like a great boss. Because he wouldn't even come down to see if the complaints were valid himself. He's just like, no, it's fine because I'm sitting here with a fan. No. Story number 7 is coming to us from r/petty revenge. They ruined my laundry, so I made their next load memorable. This happened a few years ago when I was living in the dorms at college. If you've ever done laundry in a dorm, you already know. It's basically a gladiator area with lint. The dryers were not cheap, so I always tried to be strategic and economical. I'd set a timer, show up early, so I could get my clothes out right when it was finished. One day I came back a few minutes before my cycle was done with my bag of snack-sized Doritos, feeling very responsible, only to find my clothes had been pulled out early and dumped onto a table. Annoying already, but it gets better. The table was covered in a puddle of soda. So now my almost dry clothes were damp, sticky, and smelled like a Pepsi. I was furious. Not mild inconvenience furious, more like I paid for that dryer time and now I have to rewash everything furious. Now, I'm not a destructive person, but I do believe in educational pettiness. I noticed the person's clothes were still in the dryer, so I added the full bag of snack-sized Doritos into their laundry load, shut the door, and set it to high heat and let the cycle continue. When that dryer finished, I happened to be hanging out in the lounge outside the laundry area. A girl came out looking angry with the laundry basket full of orange-streaked Dorito-smelling clothes. Was it mature? No. Did it restore balance to the universe? Also no. Did it make me feel better in that exact moment? Absolutely. Moral of the story, don't touch other people's laundry, or you might end up smelling like a walking snack aisle. I'm not mad about this. I hope that the person that stole your dryer was the person that I hope this happened to the right person, but I'm not mad about it. Turnabout is fair play. They got your clothes dirty, you had to rewash them, you did the same to them. Fair's fair. I'm here for the educational pettiness. Story number 8 is coming to us from r/petty revenge. Bad hangover. Notorious party animals live next door. They've been at war with the other neighbors the whole time. Basically entitled kids whose mommy and daddy bought them a house, which they turned into a frat house, even though they don't go to college. We'd see them put a sofa on their roof and sit drinking all weekend, urinating off the roof and smoking a bong in the backyard at 9 a.m. We had young kids and just told them to ignore the boys and we'd get on with life. Their antics didn't bother me too much as we have quite good soundproofing. Plus, I'm good at zoning out noise when I sleep. We're in a 2-story place and we let our trees grow as a screen. Other neighbors were skeptic about it and started a war which usually ended in calls to noise control, police, or one time, someone slashed the boys' car tires. Things went quiet for a while. Fast forward 8 years and these boys are in their 30s and should know better. One night I'd been up at the hospital all hours as my dad was dying and I needed sleep. The party started up next door and I lay listening to it all night long. That Sunday morning, I got our biggest portable speaker and put it near the fence and blasted ABBA and Barry Manilow and then some AC/DC while I trimmed our trees with my chainsaw. I sawed that same branch for about an hour. My husband had some metal work to do, so he set up the grinder near the fence and did that grinding for a couple of hours. After a couple of hours, the boys staggered outside and I could see them pointing at our house. Poor babies had a rough night, I guess. Bad hangover. You knew They kept you up all night. You knew they were up all night, so they would be trying to sleep the next morning. That was excellent revenge. I don't even think that was petty revenge. That was turnabout as fair play. They got what they deserved. After 8 years, they didn't learn the lesson. I don't know if I could. I don't know if I could handle it. But props to you for not doing anything insane like slashing somebody's tires. Okay, that is 8 stories for this week's episode of Petty Please. Thank you so much for being here for another episode of the Misty Morrison Podcast. Remember, start each day with a grateful heart. Kindness changes everything. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.